Hey guys, in this video, we'll be listing our favorite whiskeys from every single state in the US of A.
Did your favorite make the list? Stay tuned to find out. Here's a little fun fact for you guys. According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, from 2001 to 2021, the number of distilleries in the US went from 66 to over 1,400. Every state is getting in on the action, so we're here to pick our favorite whiskey from each state.
And we know that this video is going to spark a ton of debate, and we want to hear from you in the comments section. But because Kentucky is probably going to be the most wildly contested one, we're going to leave that one for last.
Last thing, for each of the bottles we chose, we tried to pick ones that were sourced from that state, not just aged there. Not always possible, but we did have that in mind when choosing these whiskeys.
Right, and we also picked accessible whiskeys. This list wouldn't be fair if all of a sudden you see a $5,000 bottle that is extremely rare and hard to find. We didn't do that to you guys. We picked stuff that's accessible that you could get in your local liquor store.
Let's get onto it. All right, so first up, we're gonna start right away with Alabama. And we're gonna start with Black Patch Bourbon. And I gotta give a shout out to my West Point classmate here, Clay Hinchman. He's running that operation over at Black Patch Bourbon. They're doing great things. And a portion of every bottle sold goes to veteran charities.
I love that.
Yeah. Next up, we got Alaska. And for this one, we chose Denali Spirits American Single Malt. So it's actually located in a really small town near the base of Mount Denali, which is the highest peak in North America. So it's 100% malted barley, and it falls on the sweeter side, making it a great sipper. Next up on the list, Arizona. We picked Adventurous Stills the Lost Dutchman Rye Whiskey. This one has a super interesting mash bill of only rye, 90%, and wheat, 10%. So the rye is caramelized first, which actually makes it a bit sweeter for a rye whiskey.
Next in line is Arkansas, and we picked Rocktown 4-grain sour mash bourbon. This one uses all 4 whiskey grains in its mash bill, which is corn, rye, wheat, and barley, to make a really interesting and unique bourbon. So you're talking about unique mash bills, I think that's a really unique mash bill.
Yeah, that would qualify.
Next up, we have California with Redwood Empire Emerald Giant.
That's a great one.
Yes. Rye is where it's at in California, and this was a stiff competition because there's a lot of distilleries there. But to us, Redwood Empire produces the best from the state. The Emerald Giant gets better and better with each sip, and it produces notes of baking spices, oak, citrus, and vanilla.
Nice.
Delicious. For Colorado, we have Stranahan's Blue Peak. Colorado also has a big abundance of whiskey.
Tell me about it.
We think Stranahan's Blue Peak single malt whiskey is among the best. It's double distilled and aged for 4 years in brand new American oak barrels, providing a delicious marriage of Scottish and American whiskey making traditions.
Nice.
It is delicious.
Yeah. Next up, Connecticut. And for Connecticut, we chose Litchfield Distillers Port Cask Finished Bourbon. So what they did here is they took their bourbon and finished it in port cask for 6 months, giving it a really sweet finish. And just this year, Litchfield took home Connecticut Distillery of the Year at the New York International Spirits Competition. Next up, the tiny state of Delaware. So we're gonna go with Dogfish Head with a whiskey called Let's Get Lost. Now, actually, Dogfish Head's always been one of my favorite beers. Awesome beers that they produce there. Pumpkin beer is my favorite, pumpkin ale. And then they turned to whiskey. So they actually use applewood smoke malt instead of peat, which creates sort of like a campfire style whiskey. So it's actually the perfect sipping whiskey for the fall.
I'm gonna take a sip of this right now.
All right.
I hope you have your apple bottom jeans on because we're gonna cover Florida right now.
Damn, that just happened.
It happened.
That might have been the worst segue we've ever had.
Damn.
For Florida, we have picked Wild Buck Rye Whiskey, and we're actually having a little bit of that right now.
How about that?
Florida isn't making a ton of traditional whiskey, but Wild Buck American Rye is an exception to that. It's aged a minimum of 4 years, it's bold and incredibly smooth.
Okay.
Plus, it's also grain to glass, being one of the only distilleries in Florida to use rye from the Sunshine State.
All right, next up in the alphabetical states, we got Georgia. Georgia. We're gonna go here with 13th Colony and their Southern Bourbon Whiskey. So this is a multiple double gold winning bourbon, and it's actually rapidly expanding its distribution across the US, so there's probably a good chance you'll be able to find this one.
Good, because it's tasty. It is a tasty sumbitch.
I have been waiting all day to hear Eddie pronounce this next distillery.
Hey, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, can you help me out here for a second, please?
Yeah.
For Hawaii, we have Old Pally Road Whiskey from Ko'olau Distillery.
Nice job.
So I believe that this is one of the only distilleries that produces whiskey in Hawaii, and that's due to the fact that they import a lot of food and grains from outside sources. However, they do make their own rye and their own wheat, so hopefully we will see more distilleries popping up out there in the near future. But for right now, this is what we have. It's an okay whiskey. You could definitely use it better to mix and to make good cocktails. For Idaho, we have Grand Teton 8-year higher rye bourbon, and it's proofed with pure mountain water and bottled from single barrels. This is as solid as it gets for a state that doesn't really produce a whole lot of whiskey.
Right.
This could stand against any other whiskey from any other state. So definitely recommend picking it up. It's in fact the oldest age statement, being 8 years old, from any Idaho distillery.
Wow.
Now we got Illinois. Blown Bros straight rye whiskey.
Bros.
It's the bros.
Not even the brothers. They're the bros.
They're the bros like Super Mario.
Okay.
Yes.
Are they plumbers?
They might be.
Okay.
But you know what? I don't care if they're plumbers or not. They make excellent whiskey. So the straight rye whiskey is spicy with a light hint of smoke and dried berries. It's a fairly complex rye whiskey that could hold its own against some of the more popular ryes out there. So definitely pick it up if you can. Blown Bros straight rye whiskey.
Bros.
Yes.
Not even brothers, just
No.
bros.
Just like you. You are my bro. I'm not talking to you.
Damn.
I'm talking to you.
Damn.
So for Indiana, hold on to your seats. We got Carl T. Huber's Double Oak Bourbon Whiskey. And that's from Starlight Distillery. So Indiana's making some great stuff. But this one had to top our list. Starlight has taken a bourbon that has won many Best in Show awards, and they finished it in toasted barrels, making this a delicious and complex and oaky whiskey.
So good.
We're done with the Eddie part of this segment, and now we're gonna give it to Ryan.
That's very sad.
No, I'm so glad. I need a refresher in my mouth.
Why do you say things? Why do you talk?
I don't understand why everything that comes out of my mouth is disgusting.
Next up, we got Iowa. For this one, we chose Cedar Ridge's The Quintessential American Single Malt. So over the past 4 years, this single malt has taken home awards at nearly every major spirits competition. And Cedar Ridge itself was even voted Distillery of the Year in 2017 by the American Distilling Institute. We're gonna stay in the Midwest. Moving out to Kansas, we've got Gunner's Wheated Bourbon, their original heritage expression. So Kansas's nicknames are the Sunflower State and the Wheat State. So we had to go with a wheated bourbon here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, 34% wheat, in fact. Not only that, but it's taken home double gold awards. And if you've ever had it, it has a really, really smooth, creamy finish to it. So I love that one. Moving south to Louisiana, we've got J.T. Mellick's American Rice Whiskey.
Ooh.
Rice whiskey? Yes. So this one's got a very unique mash bill as it uses 100% rice.
That's crazy.
I know. 100% rice.
That's nuts.
You'd think it was a sake or something or a soju, but it's all grown on their farm in Louisiana. And it's aged for almost 5 years in American oak barrels. And I know it's starting to come here in Texas quite a bit. So if you can find it in your area, definitely check out JT Mellick's American Rice Whiskey. Moving back up to New England, we got Maine. And maybe one of my favorite distillery names of all time, Wiggly Bridge, and their New England single malt. So Wiggly Bridge is actually the 16th fastest growing distillery in the US. So they recently released a single malt, which is 100% from Maine, and it's already taken home awards for Best American Single Malt, and Wiggly Bridge even got Maine Distillery of the Year.
Oh.
Yep. All right.
It's me again, guys.
Guess who's back?
Back again. Eddie's back. Maryland. Alrighty.
Well done.
For Maryland, we got one of our favorites. One of our favorites from the entire list. And that is Sagamore Rye Double Oak.
It's my favorite from the entire list.
If you don't remember from our last video that we did with Sagamore, which was our best double oaks from the United States, Ryan damn near had an orgasm right next to me, and it was very strange.
How dare you? But it's true.
It is unique. It is tasty. It is smooth. It is oaky. It is everything you want from a rye double oak whiskey. I highly recommend you get it. Sagamore Rye.
Yep. So for my home state of Massachusetts, we are going with Berkshire Mountain Bourbon. So this was a double gold winner in Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible.
Oh, I love Jim Murray.
Yeah. It's a little spicy, little fruity. And the distillery itself is only a couple miles from the Appalachian Trail. So if you're looking for a little break from hiking, highly recommend you check out Berkshire Mountain.
Nothing gets you more hydrated than whiskey when you're going on a hike trail.
I mean, there's a lot of water in whiskey, so it makes sense.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
The views expressed in this portion of the video are not considered hydrating advice. Drink whiskey and hike responsibly.
Moving west, we're heading to Michigan. And from Michigan, we chose Eastern Kills Michigan Straight Rye Whiskey. This one is also a multiple award winner. It's a no-nonsense rye. It's like as straight as rye as you can get. Double pot distilled and made up from a combo of rye and barley. And make sure to check out their neighborhood bar in Grand Rapids called EK Wealthy. Incredible cocktail menu.
From Minnesota, we got Brother Justice cold peated American single malt whiskey. And this is unique to only Brother Justice. They have trademarked this. Named 4th most innovative spirit in the world by Spirit Business in 2023, Brother Justice invented a new process of infusing aged whiskey with a proprietary peat product from Minnesota. Yeah, the result is a unique, flavorful single malt that stands its own against any other.
Next up, Mississippi.
Good old Mississippi.
So we're going on to the Cathead Distillery here with their Old Soul Bourbon. This one's interesting because it's actually a blend of 2 whiskeys. Each has an identical high rye mash bill, but one is aged longer than the other. This one's also won multiple awards, but it's one of the few on this list that was sourced from outside of its home state. All right, moving on. We are going to Missouri.
Good old Missouri.
And from Missouri, we have chosen Holiday's Soft Red Wheat. Now, this is actually from the oldest distillery in Missouri, and they use a soft red winter wheat, making it super creamy, super smooth. This is one of my personal favorites, and this one's also available in many areas too, so you should be able to find it where you live. All right, we are moving on to the great state of Montana.
Oh, good old Montana.
Good old Montana. So what did we choose from Montana? We went with Headframe Spirits, Kelly American Single Malt. Now this is actually from the 2024 Montana Distillery of the Year. So they're doing some good things.
Yes, they are.
So this single malt is 100% sourced from Montana. It's aged anywhere from between 2 to 5 years, and they finish it in sherry casks for at least 5 to 6 weeks, so it gives it kind of a sweeter flavor at the finish. All right, so we are moving our way down to Nebraska.
Good old Nebraska.
So Nebraska, we chose Cut Spike, and their American single malt in maple syrup barrels.
Oh, great.
Oh yeah.
So yummy.
Yep.
Yum, yum.
So this one comes from the same owners as Lucky Bucket Brewing. They actually finish it in maple syrup barrels that they get from Vermont. So flavored whiskeys, you tend to get some of the really sweet maple syrup taste, but this one's not overly sweet. So it's a perfect fall or winter whiskey. We're going to Nevada, and we got Frey Ranch Farm Strength Uncut.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, I'm not usually a big cask strength drinker, but this one's an exception. It's a 4-grain mix, 100% grown on site in Nevada.
Nice.
And this one's also won multiple awards as well. So Frey Ranch, their distribution is kicking out in a lot of areas in the US, so you can probably find it near you as well. So moving back across the country, we got New Hampshire. For this one, we went with Tamworth Distilling, William Whipple's Winter Wheat Whiskey.
Holy crap, say that 3 times fast.
Yeah, so it's actually named after one of the signatories of the Declaration of Independence. This whiskey features barley and 3 types of wheat, to include chocolate and caramel wheat, making it the perfect winter sipper. All right, guys, we are heading down to New Jersey now. For this one, we've got Asbury Park Distilling's Double Barrel Bourbon. Now, I never thought I'd be picking a Jersey Shore bourbon, but there's a lot to like about it. It's a high rye, about 36% rye actually, and there's a bit of juniper and gin influence, which they also distill there, so it gives it a pretty unique flavor profile.
All right, next up is New Mexico. And for New Mexico, we have Colquigan Single Malt Whiskey. This award winner is making waves in the whiskey world. They follow a Scottish tradition of making single malts, but Colquigan replaces peat smoking with mesquite smoking. So that creates a distinct and delicious flavor that is uniquely from New Mexico.
You know, we're starting to find that more and more often now, that the peat is being replaced with mesquite or applewood.
Yes.
Creating sort of like a campfire whiskey.
Absolutely. And you're also taking traditional aspects of Scotch and remaking them the American way.
Yeah.
Which I love. Now we're headed to New York. For New York, we have Kings County Straight Bourbon. Coming out of NYC's oldest whiskey distillery, this bourbon is made up of 80% corn and 20% malted barley. So even though it's a bourbon, it has a lot of Scotch qualities to the nose and the palate. The bottles are really cool too. They look like some old apothecary sort of deal. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat. I like that distillery a lot.
Yeah, me too. All right, we are moving back down to North Carolina. So here we chose the Weldon Mills Reserve Bourbon. So Weldon Mills has actually been labeled as the #1 micro distillery in America. So it's really no surprise that their reserve bourbon whiskey has racked up all kinds of awards. It comes in at 110 proof, and it's a wheated bourbon, but it's much more approachable than its proof suggests. Highly recommend checking it out. North Dakota, we chose Proof Distillers and their Glen Fargo malt whiskey. So North Dakota actually leads the US in production of barley, so it's only fitting that we really chose a single malt. Surprisingly though, this is North Dakota's first single malt since Prohibition.
Really?
Yeah, but if you ever take the Amtrak to Fargo, Proof Distillers is only a few steps away from the train station. Give it a shot. So where are we going next?
Good old Ohio.
So for Ohio, we chose Middle West Dark Pumpernickel Rye. So this one's actually super interesting. It's a 4-grain rye whiskey consisting of 80% dark pumpernickel rye, and it also has corn, soft red winter wheat, and 2-row barley. I prefer the standard version at 96 proof, but they also have a cask strength version coming in at over 125 proof. Middle West doing some great things out in Ohio.
Next in line, we have Oklahoma with Hochatown Distilling Small Batch Select Straight Bourbon Whiskey. This grain to glass bourbon has a robust flavor profile. Oklahoma doesn't have a ton of distilleries, but even if they did, this small batch select straight bourbon would hold its own.
Agreed.
Next up, we have Oregon.
You said it right.
Oregon. For Oregon, we have McCarthy's Oregon single malt. I can't say Oregon. Oregon.
You said it right.
Oregon.
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 Hey, you got to be consistent. Oregon.
Oregon. Oregon. Oregon. We have McCarthy's Oregon single malt. Next up, we have Oregon, and we have McCarthy's Oregon single malt. Nobody should be allowed to say that word more than once, and I had to, and I hate you for it.
Damn.
We have to pay homage to America's first single malt, and that's what we have here with McCarthy's. It's reminiscent of an Isle of Scotch with its peaty and smoky smell and taste, and it's obviously held its own, winning awards after awards after awards. This thing is phenomenal. I absolutely love this one. Oregon, you're doing it right.
Yeah, if you like Isle of Scotches, check that one out.
Now we're up to Pennsylvania. Stoll and Wolf Pennsylvania Rye Whiskey.
Nice.
It sounds like a law firm, but it's actually a distillery. So a little known fact about the popular Mistress Distillery back in Kentucky
Okay.
is that they started in Pennsylvania. And the last master distiller that worked in Mistress was Dick Stoll. And Dick Stoll is who started Stoll and Wolf.
Look at that.
And he personally distilled this whiskey. And it is delicious and it's oaky. And this rye is a must get. If you could find it, get it.
We are moving on to the smallest state, Rhode Island. So from Rhode Island, we are choosing Sons of Liberty Uprising.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Now, of all the distilleries we're featuring today, this one is actually closest to where I grew up. So this one actually uses 100% malted barley, and it's distilled from a traditional stout beer mash. So stout beers are typically good in the winter. So this one actually makes a great sipping whiskey for wintertime.
Next in line is one that I'm very excited about sharing with the world because the world needs to know about this.
Yeah.
And that's South Carolina's Jimmy Red Straight Bourbon, finished in peach brandy casks.
So good.
All right, so if you want to try something truly unique, it's hard to beat a bourbon that uses only Jimmy Red corn
That's
in its
awesome.
mash bill,
That's awesome.
right? And it's finished in peach brandy casks, and not just any peach brandy casks. So Jimmy Red makes these brandies that are very, very hard to get, and they use the casks from these brandies to finish the bourbons. What you get here is a flavor profile of a bourbon that reminds you of a peach cobbler and baking spices, and it's incredible. Highly recommended.
Great dessert whiskey.
Yes.
So good. So from South Carolina, now we're going to South Dakota. We got Black Fork Farms bourbon, toasted Mongolian oak finish.
Wow.
Yeah. So this one was actually tricky because Black Fork has 3 different finished bourbons: American, French, and Mongolian oak. So all of them are toasted finish, but the Mongolian oak was deemed the winner because it was the most unique of the bunch, but they're all good, so you can't go wrong.
So I have the pleasure of introducing to you our favorite whiskey from Tennessee, which is very hard to do because obviously Tennessee has some amazing stuff.
Right?
So here we go. Uncle Nearest 1856.
Gee, how many
Yes.
people saw that coming?
I know, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of competition. The unsung hero of Tennessee whiskey, Nearest Green, is finally starting to get his just due thanks to the Nearest Green distillery. So they are producing some amazing, delicious, smooth, and traditional Tennessee whiskey. But none are arguably better than Uncle Nearest 1856.
Yeah, it's hard to top it. And if you check out the Uncle Nearest website, you'll see a really good description of it, narrated by Jeffrey Wright.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. Highly recommend you watch it. Learn a little bit about the culture of Tennessee whiskey because a lot of it stems from Uncle Nearest.
Yeah. It's pretty fascinating, actually.
Texas is up next. And who better to explain to you about Texas than me?
Thanks. I'm here too.
So for Texas, we picked Still Austin Bottled and Bond Rye. And this thing is phenomenal. It's actually one of my favorite whiskeys,
Hands down.
probably of all time.
Yeah.
This incredibly smooth rye whiskey imparts flavors you'd expect from a rye without being overpowering in spice.
Right.
What you get is one of the most balanced rye whiskeys on the market today.
Hands down.
It is, to me, one of my favorites. I think it's like tasting dark chocolate with a little bit of spice. It's like a Mexican dark chocolate. Next in line, we have Utah.
Hey.
Good old Utah. And for Utah, we're going to be drinking High West High Country American Single Malt.
Solid choice.
So High West is Utah's first legal distillery since 1870. And their High Country Single Malt is a great representation of the growing category that is American Single Malt.
I agree.
Yeah, it's incredibly smooth. It's delicious. Highly recommended. If you like single malts, if you like Scotch, this is a great way to get yourself into American single malt, which is very, very similar.
Yeah, and we did a whole video on American single malts, so make sure you check that as well.
Next, we have Vermont, and we are covering Whistle Pig Old World Rye, aged 12 years. To make this Old World Rye, Whistle Pig used barrels that previously held wines like Port and Madeira to finish the rye whiskey. But first, it was aged for 12 years in new American oak barrels. So the result is complex and spicy and sweet. It has all these notes that are elevated by the Whistle Pig brand. For Virginia, we have John J. Bowman Single Barrel. This popular bourbon is making waves by being compared to some of Kentucky's best bourbons like Blanton's and E.H. Taylor.
Yeah, it actually is said to have the same mash bill as the H. Taylor. So, I mean, it's a delicious option.
Absolutely. We even compared it
Yeah,
to E.H. Taylor
we did.
in our previous video.
Yep.
So when you're done with this video, go check that one as well.
That was our affordable alternatives to premium bottles.
This traditional single barrel bourbon has become one of my favorites. It honestly, to me, compares to any bourbon that is on this list.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think we even liked it better than the E.H. Taylor when we
We
went.
did.
Yeah.
Yes, and rightfully so. This thing is delicious. For Washington, we got Westland American Single Malt. They use 5 or 6 different malts, aged in various different types of casks. So the results are outstanding.
Yeah.
I highly recommend giving this one a try. It's very smooth, it's very complex, it's sweet. It is everything that you want from a single malt, and then some.
Yeah. Westland's doing great things.
Next in line, we have West Virginia. We're almost at the end.
We're on the W's. We're almost there.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
So for West Virginia, we picked Smooth Ambler Old Scout Bourbon, aged 7 years.
Nice.
So they have 2 different scouts. They have the regular one and the one that's aged for 7 years.
Okay.
Highly recommend the 7 years. It's a lot more complex and flavorful. And it has a high rye content, and it gives it both that spiciness from the rye and the sweetness from the corn. And it also has a longer age statement. So with a longer age statement, you're gonna get bolder flavors that impart wood and tobacco notes.
Nice. Next, we are moving into cheese country, Wisconsin.
I love me some cheese.
Yes. So from Wisconsin, we got Driftless Glen Single Barrel Rye Whiskey. Now, Driftless Glen makes some great whiskey, but we ultimately chose their Single Barrel Rye because the cherry and the dark chocolate you get balances perfectly with the rye spice, especially when you get the rye that's higher in age statement. It's fantastic.
Yes.
Definitely check out Driftless Glen if it's in your area.
We're on to our second to last state in the good old US of A. And for that one, we have Outrider from Wyoming Whiskey.
Nice.
And this is an interesting blend of two whiskeys. It's a high rye bourbon and an almost rye whiskey with 48% rye.
Yep.
So little known fact, Still Austin from Texas uses Nancy Fraley as their master blender. And she also considered that whiskey from Wyoming Whiskey her absolute favorite. And we tend to agree.
All right, guys, we've covered every single state except for Kentucky, the home of bourbon. So Kentucky produces more bourbon than anywhere else in the U.S. So this pick caused us a little bit of panic, a little bit of anxiety, and he didn't sleep at all.
I did not sleep.
He didn't sleep at all.
I was having nightmares about this. I don't want to let you guys down.
But here we are. The best from Kentucky is
Bardstown Bourbon Origin Series. What happened?
I don't know.
Bardstown Bourbon Origins. You don't say Origins? Bardstown Bourbon's Origin Series. This is too much. This is too much to say.
Right.
You say it.
Bardstown Bourbon Origin Series Straight Bourbon.
That's right. This incredible, smooth, high rye bourbon has won countless awards in every competition it's been in. It is considered one of the best bourbons of Kentucky. It has won double gold and has gotten 98 out of 100 in the International Wine and Spirit competition. It is, to me, one of the best, smoothest, and quintessential bourbons in the United States today. And it's not that expensive.
Right.
It is highly recommended. You can find it anywhere. You don't have to wait in line to go get it. If you could find it in your store, get it. All right, so that was a really good list. That was exciting.
We just went through all 50 states and chose our favorite from each one. Now, I'm sure that some of you might agree and some of you will probably disagree. So we want to hear from you in the comments right now. What did we get right? And what did we get wrong?
And keep in mind that we never get anything wrong. If you're watching this video in the beginning of November, it's around the time that we're celebrating Veterans Day here in the United States, and that's why we made this video. And I would like to say thank you to every single veteran out there that has risked their lives, including this guy right here.
And a big shout out also to all the veteran-owned distilleries out there. You know who you are, but thank you for what you do.
In the meantime, please like, share, and subscribe. Let your friends know that we're here. We want to welcome them. We want to give them a nice little friendly hug and share some whiskey with them. Until next time,
Cheers.
cheers.